Welcome back! Today's explainer is a seriously fascinating journey into the literal fabric of reality itself. We're going to explore the evolution of metaphysics, kind of treating it like a massive software upgrade for the human operating system that spans centuries. We'll start with the classic baseline code of Thomas Aquinas, upgrade to the dynamic, high-performance vision of Norris Clarke, and finally arrive at a brilliant modern matrix. A final patch, if you will, by Father Bonaventure Chapman. It's a matrix that elegantly solves a centuries-old philosophical mystery, the true nature of beauty. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, here is our roadmap. We're taking this building block journey step by step. First, we'll ask, what are the Transcendentals? Then, version 1.0 with Aquinas, version 2.0 with Clarke's upgrade, version 3.0, which is Chapman's matrix, and lastly, the unique power of beauty. Section 1. What are the Transcendentals? Let's set the stage by laying down the core baseline for this explainer.
What exactly are we talking about when we use a huge word like transcendentals? Well, simply put, they are the ultimate properties belonging to absolutely everything that exists. Think of reality, or being, which philosophers call ens, as this massive glowing diamond. If you hold a diamond up to the light, you don't see 5 different rocks, right? You see one single rock reflecting light in multiple brilliant ways. The transcendentals aren't separate things attached to the diamond. They're literally the different facets of that exact same diamond. They are convertible with being, which means they are perfectly coextensive in reality. Wherever you have existence, you have these properties. They only differ in concept, or ratio, and that's really just a fancy way of saying that each transcendental expresses the whole of being, just viewed from a slightly different angle.
Okay, moving to Section 2, version 1.0 Aquinas. Let's look at how this base code was mapped out back in the Middle Ages. Thomas Aquinas gives us the canonical account in his foundational work, De Veritate. He realizes that because being is the most general concept possible, you can't just add anything to it from the outside. There is nothing outside of being. So the transcendentals have to be general modes of being that are already there, just waiting to be made explicit. And he derives them incredibly systematically. First, looking at being in itself affirmatively, it is a res, a thing, having an essence. Looking at it negatively, it's unum, one. It's not scattered into a million pieces. It holds together as itself. And when you look at it in relation to other things, it is aliquid, something. It has specific boundaries making it distinct from whatever is sitting next to it. Have you ever wondered how we intuitively categorize the world? Well, Aquinas argues it all stems from this fundamental architecture. But he doesn't stop there. He looks at being in relation to the human soul, specifically our core faculties. When reality hits your brain, your intellect, we call it verum, or truth. Truth is simply being as knowable. It's the conformity, or adequatio, between the thing in reality and your mind. But when reality hits your heart, your appetite, or will, we call it bonum, or goodness. Goodness is being as desirable. It's what all things naturally seek out. And because truth and goodness are convertible with existence itself, Aquinas points out a really fascinating takeaway. Evil and falsity aren't actual positive realities. They're just privations. Think about it. Just as a shadow is literally just a lack of light, evil is just a lack of the goodness that ought to be there.
So the crucial point is, what about beauty? The classical list gave us one true and good, but beauty has always been this mysterious, hotly disputed candidate for a fourth transcendental. For centuries, philosophers argued over beauty, kind of like passionate fans arguing over movie canon. Was beauty its own distinct, standalone property of existence? Or was it just what happens when truth and goodness look really, really good together? I mean, even later heavyweight Thomist philosophers like Jacques Maritain intensely debated this exact question.
Aquinas absolutely discussed it, even if he didn't formally enroll it in his main baseline list. He defined beauty brilliantly as id quod visum placet, that which being seen pleases, and he gave it 3 specific recognizable notes: integritas, which is wholeness, proportio or consonantia, meaning harmony, and claritas, or radiance. Notice how cleverly this bridges the gap between our faculties. It's allied to goodness because it pleases us, but it differs because it adds a direct relation to our cognitive power. You know, unlike the good, which satisfies our hunger when we finally consume it or attain it, the beautiful pleases us in the mere act of beholding it, like just looking at a perfectly proportioned flower. Which brings us to Section 3, version 2.0, Clarke's upgrade. In the 20th century, a philosopher named Norris Clarke gave this classical system a profound relational upgrade. This is known as Thomistic personalism. Now, he didn't throw out Aquinas. He just deepened the code by recovering a massive, latent dynamism hidden inside of it. Clarke's governing insight hinges on this magnificent Latin phrase, augurs sequitur esse. A thing acts according to what it is. And guys, this is where the metaphysics gets an engine. Existence isn't just an inert, static fact. It's not a barcode stamped on an object. It is an act. Being is intrinsically self-communicative. If something is real, it makes a difference. It acts on other things and is acted upon. It exists specifically to express its unique nature. Let's move to and see how this builds practically. Think of the first act as the base code, the sheer fact that the substance exists at all. But code exists to be run, right? Because of the sheer dynamic energy of being, existence immediately overflows into step 2, the second act, which is action. The execution, the action, the overflow, that is what a substance is actually for. It literally exists to operate.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive difference between classical metaphysics and modern skepticism. Think about Immanuel Kant for a second. Kant argued for the unknowable noumenon, this idea that the true thing in itself is locked away behind an impenetrable wall, forever hidden from human perception. Well, Clarke looks at that and says, absolutely not. He insists that a being that acted on us but disclosed absolutely nothing of its true self is a totally incoherent bug in the system. For Clarke, to exist is to be self-revealing. It's outward-turned, dynamically woven into a vibrant community of other agents. When you read the original Transcendentals through this upgraded dynamic lens, everything just gets richer. We understand being analogically, meaning, a cat knows, a human knows, and God knows, but all in very different scaled ways. So unity isn't just a static given anymore. It's an achievement where a person actively integrates themselves under one great love. Truth is no longer just matching facts. It becomes aletheia, an active, vulnerable unveiling of reality to the mind. Goodness becomes an ecstatic sharing, pouring outward like a fountain, just like God creating the universe. And because action is so central to this upgrade, Clarke actually adds a completely new transcendental to the list, activity itself. So, for Clarke, where exactly does beauty fit into this energetic framework? Well, it crowns the whole system. Beauty is highly ontological, meaning it's tied directly to existence, known intuitively in its raw existential singularity. In plain English, you don't have to painstakingly calculate beauty. When it hits you, you just instantly know it. It beautifully synthesizes the other transcendentals, because it draws on both human faculties at the exact same time, the intellect that beholds the truth and the will that delights in the good. This powerful synthesis perfectly prepares the ground for our final pitch. Section 4. Version 3.0, Chapman's Matrix. This brings us right up to the modern day, deriving from an incredible explainer by Fray Bonaventure Chapman, where he proposed a totally new relational framework. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Chapman brilliantly systematizes this entire philosophical journey into a 2x2 grid based purely on relations between the self and the other. Check this out. If you cross the self relating to the self as the self, the corresponding act is self-consciousness. That gives us unity. If the self relates to the other but treats it as the self, meaning you pull the other into your own mind, the act is knowing, giving us truth. If you relate the self to the self, but as an other, meaning you want to change yourself to become the good you see out there, the act is loving, which gives us goodness. And finally, if you relate the self to the other as another, you get contemplation. You finally arrive at beauty. Section 5, the unique power of beauty. Let's really direct our focus here because this is the ultimate payoff. This matrix is an absolute game changer for resolving the mystery of beauty. Think deeply about how you interact with the world around you. When you learn a truth, your mind grasps it. You are literally drawing the other into yourself to possess that knowledge. When you desire goodness, the exact opposite happens. You're drawn out of yourself because you want to imitate, attain, and become that good thing. Both of these powerful interactions involve a kind of absorption or transformation of either yourself or the object. But beauty is entirely different. In beauty, through the act of contemplation, the object remains fully, perfectly other. You don't try to eat a beautiful sunset, right? You don't try to memorize a soaring symphony just to pass a test. Beauty is the literal only relation where the thing you're experiencing is neither possessed by you nor imitated by you. You simply stand before it in total awe, letting it be exactly what it is. Chapman argues that this unique framework makes beauty uniquely evidential. Because it completely halts our normal everyday human instinct to either consume something for our knowledge or use something for our own goodness, beauty acts like a giant signpost. It points far beyond your own self-interest. It validates that things have a sheer independent reality and value, completely independent of us. And ultimately, that outward arrow points all the way out to the source of all reality itself, God.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Look around at your life today through this profoundly new metaphysical lens. If beauty is the one thing that uniquely calls you out of yourself, stopping you in your tracks, without demanding to be used, consumed, or possessed, what sheer reality is it pointing you toward today? Thank you so much for exploring this metaphysical upgrade with me. Keep seeking out the beautiful, and I'll see you next time.